AI reads OpenAI's privacy policy, finds data trap. OpenAI operates three separate privacy frameworks depending on where you live and how you access their products, creating a fragmented accountability structure that would make any regulatory lawyer nervous. The EU privacy policy, updated in April 2024, the general terms of service, and separate FAQ documents for data controls and memory features form a maze of overlapping and sometimes contradictory provisions. This isn't accidental. By splitting key disclosures across multiple documents, OpenAI ensures that even the most diligent user will miss crucial details about how their data gets weaponized for model improvement. The EU privacy policy contains a particularly troubling section on legitimate interests that functions as a catch-all justification for data processing. OpenAI claims legitimate interest in using your conversations to develop, improve, and provide our services, without defining boundaries on what improvement means or how long this interest persists. Under GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, Article 6(1)(f), companies can process data based on legitimate interests only when those interests aren't overridden by individual privacy rights. OpenAI never explains how they balance this equation. They simply assert the interest exists and move forward. This vague framing opens the door to indefinite data retention under the guise of ongoing model development, a practice that privacy regulators in Ireland and the European Data Protection Board have started questioning. The Data Controls FAQ reveals the real scope of OpenAI's data ambitions through what it doesn't say. Users can supposedly turn off chat history to prevent conversations from appearing in their sidebar, but OpenAI explicitly states that even with history disabled, they retain conversations for 30 days to monitor for abuse before deletion. Here's the sleight of hand. That 30-day window gives OpenAI ample time to extract, anonymize, and integrate your prompts into training datasets before the original chat technically gets deleted. The FAQ mentions that disabling chat history means conversations won't be used to train our models, but provides zero technical verification of this claim. No audit trail, no cryptographic proof, no third-party validation. You're supposed to trust that OpenAI's internal systems properly flag and exclude opted-out conversations from training pipelines. For a company that routinely scrapes the entire internet for training data, this self-certification model lacks credibility. The memory FAQ introduces an even more invasive feature that persists across conversations. ChatGPT can now remember details about you, your preferences, and your life circumstances to provide more relevant responses. OpenAI frames this as user empowerment, but the technical implementation reveals a permanent profiling system. Memories are stored indefinitely unless you manually delete them, and OpenAI admits that memories may be used to improve model performance generally. Translation: your personal details become training data. The company provides no granular controls over what types of information ChatGPT can remember. You can't tell it to remember work preferences but forget medical details. It's all or nothing, and the default setting is maximum retention. The policy documents contain a stunning admission about third-party sharing that most users will never notice. OpenAI states they may share personal data with service providers and business partners, without naming these entities or limiting the purposes of sharing. For EU users, the policy references standard contractual clauses for international transfers, but doesn't disclose which countries receive data or under what security standards. The practical effect is that your ChatGPT conversations could end up on servers in dozens of jurisdictions with varying privacy protections, and you have no right to know which ones. This opacity violates the spirit of GDPR's transparency requirements, even if it technically complies through dense legal language. Critical loopholes emerge when comparing stated policies against actual technical capabilities. OpenAI claims anonymized data can't identify individuals, but research shows large language models can memorize and regurgitate training examples. Your supposedly anonymized prompt could be reconstructed from model outputs. The company reserves the right to retain data as required by law without specifying which laws or jurisdictions trigger this retention. This blank check could justify keeping data indefinitely. For API, Application Programming Interface, business customers, OpenAI promises not to use submitted data for training unless explicitly permitted. Consumer ChatGPT users get no such protection, creating a two-tiered privacy system where enterprise clients are valued and individuals are product. The policies reference a data processing addendum for business users but provide no equivalent protections for consumers, despite consumers generating the vast majority of training data. OpenAI states you can request data deletion under GDPR, but the memory FAQ admits memories may persist in model behavior even after deletion. How can deletion be complete if your information remains embedded in model weights? The real genius of OpenAI's policy construction is that it places the burden of privacy protection entirely on users while making effective opt-out nearly impossible. Want to prevent your data from training models? Disable chat history. Want to stop memory collection? Turn off memory. Want to avoid third-party sharing? Don't use the service. But here's what they don't tell you. Even with every privacy toggle flipped, OpenAI still processes your prompts to generate responses, and that processing creates metadata, usage patterns, and behavioral signals that feed right back into model development. The fine print acknowledges that anonymized aggregate data remains fair game regardless of your settings. Since OpenAI defines what counts as anonymized, they control the escape hatch. The most legally vulnerable aspect of these policies is the fundamental misrepresentation of the exchange. OpenAI presents ChatGPT as a service provided to users, when the economic reality is that users provide training data as unpaid labor to OpenAI. This inversion matters because consumer protection laws globally require clear disclosure when a transaction involves non-monetary compensation. If your prompts are payment for service, then OpenAI's failure to quantify the value of that data or offer alternatives constitutes unfair business practice. Class action attorneys in California, where OpenAI is headquartered, could argue that users are employees or contractors entitled to compensation under labor law. The policy documents carefully avoid acknowledging this relationship, describing data collection as incidental rather than essential to the business model. That framing won't survive discovery in litigation.